I'm going to talk to you about crowdfunding from the business perspective. And from the business perspective, what we're doing is we're creating cash infusions for our business, number one. And we are investing. That means that this is what I love about crowdfunding is that we can invest with crowdfunding and we don't have to have $1 million. We can invest with $500, $1,000 and be into real estate. We can invest and be into cryptocurrency. We can invest directly into large, stable companies and create cash flow with our money. And I'm going to show you that kind of stuff.
I am here with multi-award recipient and sequential entrepreneur, Dr. Letitia Wright. Am I saying your first name correct?
You sure are. Thank you so much.
Whoop, whoop. So Dr. Letitia Wright is executive producer and host for Wright TV. So Dr. Wright, every story has a beginning. Can you tell us about yours that led you from being chiropractor to media magnate?
Okay. So when I became a physician, unlike a lot of my other classmates, I did not have a mentor or anyone to help me start my practice. So when I finally started my practice, I understood how to be a great doctor and I had great patients, but the running the office and the financial side, no one had ever taught me that. And so I struggled. We don't learn that in school. We just learn how to take care of patients.
Period.
And so I struggled and I struggled and I reached out for help to different people and I, could not get anyone to mentor me or show me anything. And I got a chance to do a local television show and I went on to talk about chiropractic health. And I don't know what was going on that day, but I had on this peach suit. I had my hair straight back then, and it was in this little roll. I mean, I was looking good. I was sharp on my stuff. It was a great show. And I went back to the studio later and I said, how did this guy get a show? Like, how does this all work? And at that time, this was years ago, the local cable stations had a mandate where they had to let the community have shows, not just the big companies. Now, when satellite companies came in, they didn't keep that same energy, but the cable companies had to do that, had to provide the community with a voice. And so they were sharing with me how I could have a community television show. And so what I did is that I started doing a show called A Healthier You, which was interviewing other doctors and talking about health because I thought it would bring more people into my office.
Right.
And I really liked it. And people kept saying, you're really good, but I was still financially struggling. So I decided to change it into a show called The Right Place, where I would interview business experts because I needed that business information for myself.
Right.
And I was getting business information. I was going, getting better and better. And then Southern California Edison, which is the Southern California Electric Company, handed me a check for $1,000. And the light went off. I was like, oh, this is a business. Oh,
right.
And so I started generating money with the show. And about 3 years in, the show was actually making more money than my practice because I was still kind of struggling with the financial part of the practice. So I took a deep breath and I sat down with my family and I said, this TV thing is what I want to do. I know I've been telling you I wanted to be a doctor since I was 3, but I'm just struggling with this office and this practice. I even reached out to a practice management company and they send out experts because there were no books back then. There was no SBA TV. There was no nothing.
Right.
And so they send out an expert to your office to help you get back on track and do all this stuff. So when they called me back and then I got my pencil, I was like, okay, they're going to send the expert over. And, what day are they coming? And I got ready for this call. And they said, yeah, Dr. Wright, we got your application and you don't make enough money to be one of our clients.
Wow. That's crazy.
So I was at the end of my rope. And so I decided to close the practice because the struggle had really drained the love of taking care of patients. And meanwhile, over here, there's this show that could call people up and go, yeah, you know what, $500 to do this and this on the show. And people are like, okay. So I decided to go with the show. And that was in 20 something, 2000. And the show took off. In 3 years, it was in the black, making money. I didn't have to feed it anymore. I wasn't running from check to check. And I was able to take it overseas when I went to Malaysia to go to business school. I was able to do shows in Malaysia. I've been all over the world with the show, and it has been just a wonderful choice.
Yes, it has. And not to mention that, like you said, you received, what was it, $1,000
This was way back,
way back
way, way,
when.
way back when. But that
So
first $1,000 check, I was like, oh, this is the business.
it's a
Oh,
business.
the
Okay.
light went off, and I was very clear about what I wanted to do.
And what you wanted to do included where you are the brains that help small businesses secure funding for their startups. Now, how did you get into that field? And was it because of that $1,000 from your earlier stages?
No, they were actually quite far apart when that happened in time. There was quite a gap there. So what happened is that we were going through a recession. This is right before President Obama became president. As you know,
Mhm.
he came into America having a really hard time financially. And I discovered a friend doing crowdfunding.
I'm saying
Uh,
crowdfunding.
yeah, it's crowdfunding. Mhm. Crowdfunding. And he was raising money for a book. He wanted to raise $5,000 for a book. And I watched this whole process he was doing, and I was fascinated. And
Mhm.
so I began to learn and study about it. And I was like, hey, people can't get money from a a bank right now, but crowdfunding, they can raise money from their own tribe, their own people,
Mhm.
money that's not a loan and money that doesn't have to be paid back. They can get investors or they can do pre-sales. It's very creative. I was like just fascinated by it, still fascinated by it. I mean, I get up every day and read something about crowdfunding in the news or whatever because it's always just like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. And so nobody really knew what it was. So I asked 10 friends who had businesses and say, like you, like Tawanda, girl, I got this crowdfunding thing. I know you don't know what it is, but do you trust me enough to try to raise $5,000 for your business using this strategy? And then my friend would say,
Yes, because
okay,
I didn't know how to pronounce it.
right. So 10 of my friends trusted me. My business friends trusted me. Six went well, four crashed and burned. You can
Wow.
still see the smoke from here. And, I learned by doing it. So there are
Right.
a lot of people who say they've read crowdfunding projects or they've read books. You've got to actually do it because how it works out in the wild in the real world is very different than what people are putting in books. And
That
I could tell when someone's speaking if they actually do crowdfunding or if they're just teaching about it
right,
because
right,
they'll say certain things. One woman was going, Kickstarter will check you out first and you have to be checked out. No, Kickstarter wants certain kinds of crowdfunding, but in terms of going deep dive to see if you're shady, they don't do that. They just check to see do you fit their criteria. And
right,
they are more picky. They'll only take 6 out of 10, but that's not what they're looking for. They're not looking for you being shady. They're looking for just do you fit their criteria for what they want to be associated with. So, I learned by doing. I kept working with clients and raising bigger and bigger amounts. And I decided to start teaching it. I called the SBA in Los Angeles and I said, who's teaching crowdfunding? And the woman at the desk said, what is crowdfunding? I said, I'm teaching crowdfunding. When do you want me to come in?
okay,
And so I started teaching other entrepreneurs because I felt like this could level the playing ground. I felt
right,
like this was an opportunity for us not to be short on cash anymore. This is an opportunity for people. Now, a lot of people think, oh, your clients are all broke. I had somebody I wanted to work with. I had a client who had given me a $10,000 budget to do social media.
hmm,
And I went to this woman in Los Angeles, beautiful African American woman, very popular. And I went to her and I said, hey, I'd like to partner on this crowdfunding project. And she looked at me, she said, your clients are broke. I literally had a $10,000 check in my pocket with her name on it. Like she could have taken that check that day.
right,
And
right,
when she said that, I said, oh, okay. because I don't work with broke people. I work with
Right.
business owners, and crowdfunding is not for broke people. It's for people to use as a mechanism to raise money.
Right.
Now, I do want to say this when it comes to business crowdfunding is very different than a personal raise. If you try to raise money to go to college or your house burned down, totally different prospect.
Right.
But business crowdfunding, you do have to invest a little bit in it. So when I have a lot of entrepreneurs going, I don't have no money, I'm like, crowdfunding is not for you because
Right.
those people that you see raising $100,000, $250,000, they put some
Poured
skin in the
into it.
game.
Right.
They
Right.
poured into it to make it happen. Now they use leverage to get more than they put in,
Right.
and
Right.
that's great. But if you're a business owner and you think you're just going to sit there and say, well, give me some money or I'm going to go over, those crowdfunding campaigns do not work well.
It's not a GoFundMe, is what you're saying.
GoFundMe is for personal stuff. I even tell my clients, don't put your thing on GoFundMe if it's for business. GoFundMe has this stench of desperation.
Hmm.
Let's take people on an investment journey or a great journey. They want to be proud of what they're doing with you.
Facts.
Not, girl, she about to go over. Let me give her $10. Nobody wants to give money to something that's already sinking. They're just like, hey, let it die and move on to the next thing.
Right. I'm glad you said that. So that brings me, I'm just going to skip to this question. In a magazine published in Forbes, January 2023, called "Why Our African American Entrepreneurs Have Found Success Through Buying Existing Companies." That's a broad statement. I mean, because there were a lot that did that. It also details that women-owned businesses have grown double the overall population, with African American women growing fastest, over 4 times the overall population rate. But it also states, and I'm glad you said that about the four friends that crashed and burned, that only 3% of Black-owned business companies mature and survive longer than 5 years. What do you think that? Why do you think that is? And is this the type of service and coaching that you offer?
Um, so indirectly, yes, this is the type of service that I offer, coaching that I offer. The main reason why Black businesses, and this is not just Black women, this is overall,
Mhm.
80 to 70 to 80% of all businesses crash in 5 years and they're gone.
Mm,
Most people don't make it to year two, three, four. That is more than, so it's not, oh, African American women, y'all don't make it. No,
right.
none of us do. None of us do. African American women are critically unfunded.
Mm,
We get 0.01% of the funding money that's out there. So while certain people that are like male, pale, and baby, and barely old enough to drink ale, they can write an idea on a napkin and somebody will fund them millions of dollars. Whereas an African American woman may have to pitch over and over and over again. The average woman, African American woman pitching, she's going to pitch over 100 times before she gets any funding. The average male who's pale and old enough, barely old enough to drink ale, pitches 10 times.
mm,
There's a whole different criteria. They're always telling us we're not ready
right.
when we're proven to take companies to the top and do well. And so when it comes to investors, there's a bias out there that keeps people from investing. There is a Black female oriented investment company that's being taken to court for racism.
Mm, that's crazy.
So they can't do anything for anybody while they fight this lawsuit from someone who's male, pale, and been old enough to drink ale for decades. But that's his thing. That's how he makes money. He just brings lawsuits that are racially, motivated. So it is not that we don't have the knowledge and you can't do it. The fact that you are underfunded is not something you can outrun. Knowledge cannot outrun underfunding.
And I know exactly who you're talking about. So we're gonna that would be in Atlanta, right?
That would be.
Okay.
And they're
So
having to fight this lawsuit instead of what they came together for, which is to help women start their businesses.
right, because of that bias. Um, you and speaking of, you've overcame a lot. Remained steadfast for over 23 years. Um, How do you do it? How do you not get burnt out?
Now I'm not gonna say I've never been burnt out. I have been burnt out. But one of the things is you do have to make sure you delegate. Like you
Mm,
cannot be the chief wearing all the hats. You
right.
know, you got to delegate something. Even if you just do something like use fancy hands as a VA, they don't do complicated things, but they can make a phone call, they can add something to your calendar, that just somebody to assist you. And that's less than $50 a month. They can help you out. Like you can't wear all of the hats. But the main thing is that I know exactly what I want to do, what I want to accomplish, how I want to impact people, and I pivot as things change.
Mm,
Where I was when I first started the show and where I am now is a little bit different. I am, because I run TV channels, Roku TV channels for clients, I run my own Roku, Amazon, and Apple TV channel. I have a great desire to see people who want to bring impact to get their message out there on media, just like you're doing right now. There are people that don't know how to do this, and so I want to help them do that. I feel like the wrong people are famous. I mean, when the Diddy stuff started coming out and the
oh,
J Lo stuff started coming out, I'm like, you know what? We need to have people who want to do good and want to impact the world for good. That's who needs to be famous. We don't have any more Mother Teresa's. We don't have these kind of people that are out there really doing good. So, and not to say that anybody is perfect and going to be held to a higher standard, but basic decency would help. I mean, we're just not seeing basic decency in people. So I really am always very clear, checking in with myself. And when it's time for me to pivot, I do that. I let whatever that is go. Because
right.
people are like, oh, you're not a doctor anymore. No, I'm still a doctor. I'm just not seeing patients anymore.
Thanks.
That's a difference. So I keep going because I love what I do. People like that have known me from way back in the day, like, I love you. You still got your hustle. I literally ran into someone at an event in Los Angeles where we were celebrating a restaurant lounge that the owner has been having it open for 11 years in Inglewood. Lavender Blue, had a great time. Met up with a photographer who says, I remember when you were doing jazz concerts. That's where we met. Now, that's when I was seeing patients. That's in the 90s. And what
The
I did, because
$1900s, as
in
people
the
say.
1900s, um, and he still remembered me, and he said, well, what are you doing here? And I hadn't seen him in quite a while, and so we were able to reconnect. But I love what I do. I'm very clear. And the thing is, a lot of people are starting stuff and they don't figure out what the revenue process is.
Thanks.
So I like to give people a pivot plan so that when you pivot, okay, where's your money coming from?
Right.
And let's do that. And let's make sure that's in place so that you can continue to do what it is you really want to do. Otherwise, it is not sustainable.
That's right. That's right. Now, you are multi-talented. You have your hands in a lot of jars right now, and you move with a standard of excellence. However, you have to have something that you are extremely critical about that is your most dominant focus. What is that
Mhm.
in business?
That I'm critical about for myself or just out in
Yes,
the world. Oh,
for
for
you.
myself, I am definitely impatient. That is something that my mother was like, you got to work on that. Yeah, she's told me my whole life till the day she passed. It was like, your impatience is what's going to get you. I'm impatient. I want people to get it. I see more from my clients than they see for themselves. I tell them, girl, I'm a queen maker. We're going to make you take over your niche. And I'm excited and ready to go. And they're like, oh my God,
Freezing up.
right. They're freezing up because I did it. That's what I did with crowdfunding. When I started with crowdfunding, I said, in 3 years, I'm going to be at the top of this because I
Right,
started and I stayed consistent and I knew what I needed to do to grow myself into the expert. I wasn't the expert when I started, but definitely became the expert. And so you can dominate your niche with a plan.
right.
With a plan. The plan has to be financed and the plan has to have some active steps that you can take starting now. See, a lot of us are looking at multimillionaires, billionaires and sitting up there going, okay, they said do this and this and this. What they're doing at a higher capacity than what you have. These
Right.
people have everybody doing their social media for them. They crack me
Yes.
up. Here's my social media plan. Honey, you're not a social media expert. You had somebody make that plan for you
Right.
and you
Right. It's
just
a lot of
execute it.
frauds.
You're right. So it's not a lot of frauds, but it's a lot of people taking, like I love Gary Vee, but when he talks about his social media plan, it's like, dude, you did not come up with that.
Right.
Somebody in your company came up with that because you have the money to pay. Somebody came to him and said, let's document your life and put it up there. And he was like, okay. He had the money to pay somebody to follow him around and create that. Most of us don't start there. So where do you start where you can?
Right.
That's where the pivot plan comes in. And so I think people are confused. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by someone who's way up there, but to sit there and take their tactics when you're still down here, it's very, very difficult.
It is because different markets, we don't, when we start a business, we don't even know who our market is. So that's a wonderful point that you touched on. Now, speaking of wonderful points, you have a beautiful program that I just love so much. It's called Are You an Entrepreneur? Can you tell us about that and who you serve with that program?
So that program was started with a very good friend of mine, Carlia Perez, and Perez old father now. And so she uh, actually approached me and said, I'm doing this business program for junior high and high school kids. Would you come and speak? And I'm like, sure. She was so surprised. She found me, she checked me out on the internet, and she just took a leap and called me out of the blue.
Mhm.
And so I went down there and I had her tell me about the program and I talked to the kids. I fell in love with those kids. I never left. I was there week one, and then I was there for the program for 4 years. And I became the main teacher teaching junior high at risk for homelessness kids. These kids were at risk for homelessness or they were involved in homelessness. There's something called McKinney-Vento homelessness, which is when you and your family are living in a motel or hotel. That's not a permanent home. Or maybe you're sharing a home with somebody, you're sleeping on somebody's couch. That is not that is part of homelessness. And so these kids were at risk or in that situation, and I was taking kids who had entrepreneurial ideas and they were pitching entrepreneurs. The first years they pitched business people in Orange County, California, House of Mouse. They were pitching people and they got $8,000 given to their businesses to turn their businesses into real things. They got
Wow.
real money. And it was just amazing. One of the little girls, she was so amazing. She was in the program. She fell and broke her leg. She came back to the program. She was in a wheelchair. She was doing some
Wow.
stuff at school. She fell again because it wasn't totally healed and re-broke the leg. She still came back to the program and I loved what she was doing. And I told her one of the benefits of your program is that you're young and they won't see you coming. So that was kind of our thing, with the class. We're young and they won't see us coming. We're
Right.
young and we won't see us coming. But she, in her first presentation, she was the first kid to say that to the people she was pitching to. And they were like, why will you be successful? And she's like, well, I'll be successful because of this and this and this. And also, I'm young and they won't see me coming.
Mm.
I was like, I almost cried. So I had a lot of fun. That people say junior high kids, oh my God, I never had any trouble the whole 4 years, not one time. I'm not saying these kids weren't a handful. Now, they had troubles other places, but they didn't give me trouble. I would sit in the office a little time before school because you could see who was getting in trouble, who's getting called into the principal's office. I tagged a couple of kids
Mhm.
out of there. One little girl had bought cookies. She made cookies and she was selling them at school. As you know, in junior high and high school, you're not supposed to sell stuff. Only the
Right.
school is. The school's selling water bottles. We brought lunch. It's an after school program, and we would bring what I call second lunch. A lot of these kids were not eating all day. They didn't eat until I came to school and brought them lunch. And I was
Mm.
only there 2 days a week.
Yikes.
So you've got these brilliant minds. I'm like, how are they doing school and they haven't eaten all day?
Right.
And so water, and literally any kid who came up to me, kids who were just like, can I have a bottle of water? I would give them a bottle of water. We don't,
Right.
we didn't say, you're not in my program, so get out. So these kids, they were able to eat. We had what's called second lunch. This is where the age where the eating disorders begin to start. And so I had to convince the girls, this is second lunch. Entrepreneurs eat because they use their brain, and you need this food for your brain.
Right. Right.
Boys, you don't have to convince them to eat. Girls are at that stage where they kind of don't want to eat. So that's what we used to do. So we fed them. So this little girl's selling cookies, and they're bringing her into the office. They're claiming they're marijuana cookies, they're
Oh,
edibles. I like, she's a child. Where's she gonna get edibles from? Anyway, I convinced them not to put her out of school, but to bring her to my class. I said, she's an entrepreneur. She needs to be in my class.
right.
So we got a couple of kids out of trouble that way. They were doing stuff that was clearly entrepreneurial, but against the rules. And so I was like, oh, they need to be in my class.
Hmm.
Anyway, I loved that. You never could have told me I would drive 90 minutes home and back to do a program with kids, but I loved it.
I love that you saw the hustler, the entrepreneur in them instead of seeing the troublemaker. So that's the big lesson. Never judge a book by its cover. Um,
Absolutely. And that little girl in February, she told me, because they were like, this is her second offense. They never told me what the first time was. Uh, she came into the program kind of late, not at the beginning of school. But what happened is in February, she bought chocolate roses somewhere for a discount and brought them to school and resold it. She made $700. She was
wow,
able to help her family pay rent.
that's awesome. That's phenomenal.
She's a businesswoman.
She is a businesswoman with the right mentor.
Yes.
With the right mentor. So, with that, you have another segment on Right TV called A Better World. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. A Better World is its own show. It's a very short show. And we do one-on-one interviews like this. It's one person per show. And the whole show is just we introduce the person to the audience and we ask the question, what's the one thing you would like to see happen to make the world a better place? Now, you don't have to have the answer of how it's going to happen, but I'd love to open up this discussion of what you would like to see happen. And I want to stimulate conversation, thought to my audience, and a reminder to the audience that they can make a difference with a little bit or a lot. It's a fascinating conversation because everybody has a different answer.
How many shows do you have on Right TV?
I think we have about 12 or 14 different shows. Everybody has it's sort of like a Netflix. Everybody has their own category. So if you start watching like TCE, the career engineer, her show is all about if you need a job, you're getting a job, you're a professional. She's a professional headhunter. She's also on the news in Virginia Beach. She's the person on the news that tells you, hey, the jobs are up or the jobs are down, or the jobs report. She's that person in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And so all of her shows are in one category. So you could binge watch all of her shows without going all over the channel. So we probably have about 12 to 15 people. However, overall, most of my clients up until now have started their own channels. I started their own channel for them, and we've put together about 45 different channels.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, you have done what others that bared witness to Oprah deemed impossible for another Black woman to do, and you've done it over 2 decades. What's next for you?
Wow, what is next? I'm really getting into the philanthropy part of my life. I have two loves, literacy and homelessness. I'm helping the unhoused. And so I want to make greater and greater contributions to Bob Lucas Library in Altadena. It is a library named after my grandfather. He fought to have this library opened in that part of town. At that time, it was the Black part of town. Now we're going 20 years later. It is no longer the Black part of town, but it's still a library that, is open for the public. Altadena only has two, the main library and then the Bob Lucas Literacy Branch. And so as a family, we're committed to supporting that library and making sure it's always there to serve the public. And also they remember who Bob Lucas was. I go to the events where they celebrate it. And I literally was at an event where this woman asked a question and she's like, well, who's Bob Lucas and why is it named after him? And people literally didn't know. And the library, overall, the libraries came together and made this great video about who my grandfather was and why it
Mhm.
was named after him. And what he had done, he had fought to open it up. It was literally closed. And he was part of the library board. And he fought to get it back open. And he passed away before they did the final vote, but they voted yes to open it, and they gave us a letter saying, and we decided to name it after him. So,
Do you, and I know we're running out of time, so I have
mhm.
two more questions.
Sure.
Do you feel like you have lived up to that legacy of your grandfather?
I think I can do more. My grandfather was in media. He was a producer. I keep his press pass here on my desk. It's from 1990. It's when he worked for the Los Angeles Sentinel. And it's an LAPD press pass. That's back when the police gave you a press pass and
Right.
you had your thumbprint and all that stuff. I love that. So I feel like I can always do more to be more supportive of the library and make sure that they have the money for the programs and that they're supporting the librarians that are there. Um, so I have high expectations for myself. I'm getting there.
Okay. No, you're meeting the expectations. Pat yourself on the back 10 times,
Thank you.
okay?
Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. Where can our viewers follow you and stay up to the minute, or even with your new magazine that you have out?
I don't have a magazine out. I just am getting into magazines, but the show, if you want to see Right Place TV channel, see my show and all the other people that I host, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Roku, or you can go to Apple TV, download the app into your account, and then open it up and watch it for free anywhere. If you want to find me on social media, I'm on TikTok as your crowdfunding expert or Dr. Wright and the number one. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Wright and the number one. I'm on Snap and Twitter or X, Dr. Wright and the number one, and I'm Dr. Letitia Wright on LinkedIn and Facebook. I am all over the place. You can definitely find me. Reach out if you have questions, thoughts, ideas. If you're trying to get your out there on streaming television, then I'm probably the channel for you. We have a wonderful opportunity for you to reach more people and reach an unlimited audience that's not straddled by some weird, you know, algorithm.
We got it. And it's not crowdfunding, y'all. I'm
Crowdfunding, yeah.
okay,
Think of the crowd. The crowd is
with
going to
a
fund
D.
you. Yes, the crowd is funding you. Crowdfunding.
Period, Pooh. So thank you so much, Dr. Wright. I
You.
appreciate you. And, you are a trailblazer. So I just hope that whatever you want to accomplish, you continue to work towards that because you have so much more in you to give, like you said.
I'm going to talk to you about crowdfunding from the business perspective. And from the business perspective, what we're doing is we're creating cash infusions for our business, number one. And we are investing. That means that this is what I love about crowdfunding is that we can invest with crowdfunding and we don't have to have $1 million. We can invest with $500, $1,000 and be into real estate. We can invest and be into cryptocurrency. We can invest directly into large, stable companies and create cash flow with our money. And I'm going to show you that kind of stuff.